Frank podcast. That's what it's called, with the man, Frank himself, Kevin Finley. Kevin, Frank was born when you were in college.
Yes.
Now, before we get into the birth of Frank, here's the question I've got to ask. Where does Kevin end and Frank begin, and Frank begin and Kevin end?
Okay. Well, that is an interesting question. Frank has always been there and still is, but a label was put on, it sort of grew on. The Filthy Frank label, which is now my brand name, by the way, grew organically. It started with Frank and then morphed into Filthy Frank, and those terms came from different people over the course of a few years, and it stuck. But I was the word Frank came in when I was in college. My first I was taking a hospitality management course at the local college, and we were about maybe a month into the first year, and our home room was a dining room, a full service dining room, and the instructor was an old school European food and beverage manager, and he had a great sense of humor, a very dynamic personality, and a brilliant PR man as well. And so part of the deal was that we had other courses like business admin courses and so on and so forth, economics, business policy, blah blah blah, all bullshit mostly. But anyways, we had the homeroom was our dining room actually, and then we had the exercise where the name Frank came was where we split the class up. The class was split up into groups, and half the class would be the diners, and the other half would be the waiters. And so it was my turn to be a waiter, and we were encouraged to, have a sense of humor, and we could use different names, and we could use language that wasn't too, vulgar or insulting or offending or nothing like that. And so I had a table of two. I was the waiter that day, and bear in mind, this is fairly soon into the course. No, but we didn't really know each other at that point, a little bit. You know how it is where if you're in a new group. So anyways, I'm the waiter. I come up and I had a table of two called a deuce, and we had a male and a female student acting as a man and wife couple. So I walked up to them, and the male said to me, because we used different names, he said, "Oh, hi, Frank," and that was where Frank came in.
So he calls you Frank.
Yeah.
Are you taken aback by it at all, or you just know, hey, this is part of the exercise, so I'm just going to roll with it?
Yeah, it was part of the exercise. I rolled with it, and it wasn't really. I didn't think anything of it, so I just carried on, and I used my sense of humor to interact with them, taking their order, and I told them, explain the specials of the evening to him, and but I didn't use the real terms that I normally would, in a normal setting. I use sort of slightly, a bit of satirical names for foods that were sort of sexual or animal innuendos. And
all right, let me stop you right there. Okay, little context. How old are you?
I just had turned 19 that year. 19
Okay.
Years old. Yeah.
So let's do this. Let's do it this way. Let's role play, because I want to get the full Filthy Frank effect. Are you ready?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Hey, Frank, how are you? You got to tell me what are the specials for the evening?
Okay. Well, we have I'll explain the specials to you. We have a twice chewed duck with a very tasty anise butter sauce, and we have deep fried cow crotch with donkey snot sauce, served with a cat litter clump cake with chocolate ice cream on it, and I don't know this. That's pretty much the way it went, you know.
All right, that's fine.
I think it was better than what I'm saying right now.
Can I start with dessert first and work my way back to the salad?
Yeah, you can. Now, dessert, yeah. Yeah, dessert, yeah. That's clump cake, kitty litter clump cake with something on it. That's really not palatable at all.
None of it sounded palatable.
No.
Twice chewed duck. Yeah, that was pretty much where I checked out.
Yeah.
Now, do you do this with a straight face? Does the couple take it in a straight face, or is just everybody broken up at this point?
Yeah, well, I didn't really have much of a focused audience on me at that point. But my victims, or the diners, were they were kind of surprised. They were surprised at my initially at my dialogue, but they laughed, they smiled. You know, it wasn't you know.
Yeah, I think it was a nervous laugh. I think it was a nervous smile. I don't think it was like, hey, this is really funny. It was probably more like, where did this guy come from?
Yeah.
What is he talking about? And what have we gotten ourselves into?
Yeah. Yeah, and exactly. And I didn't plan that. It just came out. And that's what happens. I'm spontaneous with my sense of humor. And so Frank stuck. And within by the end of that day, it was I was referred to mostly by Frank, by most of the students, and it's somehow evolved into Filthy Frank at that point too, by a few people as well, who meant that as a friendly gesture, not not as putting me down or anything, because it was
filthy. Did the filthy part exist prior to Frank being attached to it?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that this sort of uncanny, somewhat maybe offensive to many sense of humor, sort of came, I think, in my early teens, perhaps. That came out, and there was no label or name to it. That's just my friends at the time, while growing up. That was Kevin. That's the way he was. And so I, without even thinking about it, I carried on forward with that through life to this day, actually. And so Filthy Frank was somebody put a label on that. And so I went with that. I was quite comfortable with be called, Frank, Filthy Frank, Franco by some people. It's just, I don't know. It was a label. We all sort of like at that time, that was Monty Python was big in those days, especially amongst us college students. We embraced them. We adored Monty Python, and especially being in the hospitality industry, Monty Python had lots of skits on the hospitality industry, as you may know. And so I guess I was maybe the closest thing they had to a live version of close, maybe, well, not even close, but similar, somebody who could provide spontaneous humor that I did, they loved it. They loved it.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And you're talking about the food industry and the things that Monty Python did. Immediately, Spam-A-Lot comes to mind. So there's no doubt about that. It's probably a very, very good thing that your name was, or the name that was given to you when you walked up to the table was Frank.
Yeah.
Because Filthy Kevin just doesn't have the same gravitas.
No.
Is Filthy Frank.
Yeah, Crazy Kevin maybe, but not Filthy Kevin.
No, that's with a K. If anything, it would have been like Kinky Kevin or
Yeah,
something
there
like
you go.
that. It just doesn't roll off the tongue the same way as Filthy Frank.
Yeah, it just kind of fits. And it was a natural. It grew organically. And it took me a long time to actually make it a brand name. And it wasn't, I didn't, when I had done the original draft of this book, I ran it, I had a copy, and it was just a rough copy. And the name I had on it was, and we can get to that in later on. But when I joined up with this 50s band, who didn't know me, we had to have aliases. And so, of course, they asked me, Kevin, do you have an alias you want to use? Because you're a 50s band. We all have aliases, right? So I said, well, it's obvious, Filthy Frank. And so that's the name I was given. But we played some gigs that were sort of a higher profile audience. And so we used Frank You Kindly. That came up, kind of a play on words from Thank You Kindly, I guess. I don't know. So anyways, we had, I met with we had a reunion with that band about, I don't know, it was probably about a year and a half ago. And I told them about this book, and I had a copy and everything, as you see, without the name Filthy Frank, it was the name Frank You Kindly. And one of my old bandmates said, why don't you just call yourself Filthy Frank? And I thought about that. And I said, well, that makes a lot of fucking sense. That really works. Filthy Frank, here it is. So that's how the brand name became official.
So you really embraced the whole persona of Filthy Frank immediately. It wasn't like you kind of put it off or fought it or anything like that. It was, hey, I'm Filthy Frank and I own it.
Yeah. Yes, good point. And I did roll with it. And because it was my comfort zone, it was who I was. And it didn't bother me. It did bother me, I think, during my midlife crisis, which came about 20 years later. But it didn't bother me. I felt, you know, how as humans we got to feel like we're accepted, especially when you're in a new group. You have to do things. And I was just being myself, and I was being accepted for who I was. And that only encouraged me to be even more filthy. And, you know, and so it went. I was.
What instrument does Filthy Frank play in a 50s band?
Oh, yeah. Keyboards. We play piano. Keyboards.
And were there any filthy solos in there? Did you go off on tangents and find your inner Doors or your inner Beatles at that point? I mean, I know it wasn't 50s, but did you kind of veer away a little bit when given the opportunity and get a little nasty on the keyboards?
Yeah, we had moments. We had our moments. We had one night till we were playing a gig, and it was bought and paid for by. We had a fellow. It was a big club, and there was a fellow there that we later found out he was one of the local organized crime guys, and he was buying us Black Russians all fucking night, and the whole band. There was a 3-piece horn section. There was the bass band, which is about 5 or 6 people. So there were about 8 of us up on the stage. We're playing, and this guy was sending up fucking Black Russians every 10 minutes, and we were fucking gooned halfway through the night, and we were taking our shirts off, and we were getting the audience, some of the dancers, to take their shirts, the ladies, to take their shirts off too, and it was quite the fucking bizarre moment, and that was definitely a Filthy Frank moment.
What was the name of this band?
Well, that's a really good question. The name of the band, and I got this permission to use this. The name of the band is Chevy Ray and the Finns, and that is the name I used for the villain in my book, Jesse McKenzie, Lesbian with a Gun. And Chevy Ray and the Finns Chevy Ray is the bad guy, and Chevy Ray actually was a fictitious character in the actual reality of the band itself. And I used some of the nicknames of the band members in as the villain's crew as well.
I think if the 50s band morphed into the 70s, you guys could have been like Funk Frank or Funky Frank.
Yeah, that's right. We could have.
You know, get somebody in there looking a little bit more like Bootsy Collins, and you got somebody with dreads on the lead vocals, and could have been George Clinton.
Could have been
in a Parliament Funkadelic cover band.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we actually, you know, we did quite well. We actually played at Expo 86 in Vancouver, and if we had our shit together, if we weren't being stupid, we did some recordings too. But our problem was that we didn't create music that 50s with 50s production values. We created music that was 80s production values, and we forgot that that's what people knew us by, was the 50s music. So if we were smart, we would have recorded music with created music, written music with 50s production values as opposed to 80s production values. And that was our big mistake, because we certainly had the chemistry and the talent to go further than what we did.
Yeah, you recorded on the 8-track, on the 16-track. You should have done on a 4-track and done mono instead of stereo.
Yeah.
And all right, so where are the masters on those these days?
I have no idea. Since long gone, pretty much.
That's a shame, because we could be using that as intro music on the Filthy Frank podcast.
Yeah, we could be. I'll have to go in my crawl space and see if I can dig some of that out.
That would be great. Keep me posted on that one. So Filthy Frank's born at a deuce. He lives on through 50s music. Filthy Frank lives on today, and he's now an author.
Yeah.
But I know it wasn't a straight line. What happened between the 50s band and playing Expo 86 in Vancouver and 30 some odd years later getting us to this point?
Yeah. Well, you know, as we discussed earlier, my life has been like a fucking abstract painting. And as a matter of fact, I did an abstract painting that is a representation of my life. It's called the Karmatic Synchronizer. My old lady, she said, "What's that?" And I said, It's a fucking abstract painting." She says, "Well, you can't sell that." And I said, "Well, fuck you. I am going to sell that." But okay, so I finished.
So you got rid of the painting and the lady.
Yeah, I got the painting still. It's on my Kevin Finley website. But anyways, so we had there was a lot of weaving around. There was no straight path, and because that was my life, I was all over the place. I went from I worked in the hospitality industry for a few years after that. I bartender and front desk clerk. I was assistant manager at a fast food joint, and then my parents, who were in the insurance adjusting industry, talked me down. And I was in the hospitality industry while I was playing with that band. That was part of my income. Was Chevy and the Finns, and also working in hotels at the time as well. But somehow my parents got involved with my life, and they convinced me to become an insurance adjuster, and which is what I tried. I did that for about 6 or 7 years. And the highlight of that was that I ended up getting a job in '92 in where I worked for an American company that we went to Kuwait after the Gulf War and audited war damage claims for the United Nations for them to justify embargoes on Iraqi oil to repair or repay war damages for private citizens. So
How did Frank do in Kuwait?
that was scary as hell. For the first week or two, man, I was scared shitless. It was a post-war zone, and a whole new culture, like and Islamic culture. So it was totally new to me, and but I made some good friends. I spent most of that time driving around with my Kuwaiti counterpart, and we went to, and his father was he was a president of one of the big banks in Kuwait. So he had this influence, which we call wasta. And so we were supposed to take two claims a day at random, and go visit the actual people who submitted the claims. And we would go and visit them and interview them and so on, and give them a score on the validity of their claim. And so this fellow, his name was Samir, he managed to get us all the visits with the very richest people who had mansions, and they had waiting staff and butlers and all that kind of stuff. And we ended up twice a day. We drove around the country, and we interviewed, mostly visited these people, and we had tea-boys bringing us Turkish coffee and Greek pastries and Danish seafood, and it was great. Actually, I shed some tears on the plane after we took off on the way home. It was just an amazing experience, one of a lifetime for sure. And then, you want me to carry on?
No, it's just I'm just reflecting on all of this. I mean, at this point, you're in your 20s, your 30s.
Yeah.
And, at that point, you've pretty much lived a lifetime. And you're certainly a Renaissance man. There's no doubt about that. How does Frank live on today?
Today, yeah. Well, I found that writing was and is my outlet for I don't know what you would call them, thoughts, angels, demons in my spirit, soul, heart that are banging on that fucking door, let me out. And I thought it was my artwork and my music production that sort of was doing that, but it wasn't enough. So after I had a 2018, and we can get to that in more detail later, but in 2018 I had a revelation, like many, and there was reasons for that, and then within a year I had come to the conclusion that writing fiction, I needed to create a vehicle, I guess, if you will, a vehicle where my sense of humor or even my anger would have a road to go on, like to let loose, I guess would be the best description of that. So that's what I did. So that's what I started writing. I guess some would call it heavy fiction. I don't know, but that way I can create the characters. So when I write by the seat of my pants, but I also try to create the characters before writing. And that way it's a lot easier, because if you got the characters and their their internal, external conflicts, blah, 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 it's sort of, the story almost writes itself in many ways. But then writing that, my mind comes up with these things, and okay, this is what Jesse would do under the circumstances, or this is what Constable Murphy, the bad guy, would do under these circumstances, given his personality and characters and internal conflicts and all that. So I started writing, and the first book I wrote was, before I knew it, was like over 300 pages, but it was too big. But Jesse McKenzie was a character in that, as in a subplot of that book. But that book sucked. I put it on the shelf. I'm going to go back to it now that I'm a bit more experienced and educated on writing. And so Jesse McKenzie came out, and I put a story to it based on her character and some of the other characters that I created, and it all went from there. So that's how that worked.
What if you were to give advice to people that have a persona within them, and let's even back up even further. Do you ever struggle with this inner persona of Filthy Frank as Kevin Finley?
Yeah, I did. I did for many years, actually. And because I, at around late 90s, I went into a seriously deep medical, clinical depression. And we call this the midlife crisis, I guess, if you want to give it a label. But that's fine with me. But I think at that point, I still hadn't, never mind Filthy Frank, I still hadn't discovered Kevin Finley yet. And I didn't discover Kevin Finley until about 2018. So I sort of put at that time during that depression moment, which lasted for about 2 years and change, I sort of put Filthy Frank in the back burner. As a matter of fact, I didn't want to, I stayed away from people who knew me as that or called me that name. And I just didn't want any part of it. And I didn't know why until I realized that, hey, I found Kevin Finley. But you know what? Filthy Frank is just somebody put a label on that as part of Kevin Finley's personality. That's, we can call it what we want, an alter ego or whatever the case may be. But everybody's got a character of some kind. And a lot of people will put a label on it and so on and so forth. And that's what happened to me. But I realized that after 2018, that Filthy Frank is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And because I've now found Kevin Finley, and I accept the fact that I have this fucked up sense of humor, and which offends a few people, but mostly entertains most people.
You don't really strike me as somebody who's too concerned about people who don't like the frank aspect of you.
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, I am who I am, and I really, my current partner, she had no idea of Filthy Frank. Never knew it until she saw a copy of my book in my studio. So it's not something that I advertised, but that's the complex aura of my life. I have different groups of friends here for that reason, and different groups of friends there for that reason, because some of my friends are musicians, some of them are into other things, and so if I feel like going and having a jam with somebody, I'll go call Joe Blow up in the next city up island, and I'll go hang out with them for the day and play some music, or I'll just go have a couple of beers, or go visit a friend for a hike or a walk or a bike ride or whatever. It's just, I have a very, well, some would say a complicated life, but I guess that's something that sort of grew or evolved with me as life went by. And my lifestyle is all over the place with different careers and jobs and so on and so forth, that there was no escaping that. So I just accepted it. Fuck it. I don't care. I am who I am. And I'm not concerned about people who don't know. I didn't bother going out of my way to tell my current partner that about Filthy Frank. I don't know why. Well, maybe because she has a bit of vanity issues going on. I don't know. But but now she's in for some real shock now.
Be somewhat comfortable with Filthy Frank at this point.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I totally. Yeah. Like she sees this big poster on the wall as she walks by, letting the dog out for a pee in the backyard. And it's just, she's totally into entrepreneurship. Maybe not the way that I would go about it so much, but it is what it is. This is who I am. This is part of my past. And this is my fucking brand name now. So get used to it, right? So I don't think anybody. I had another old friend of mine that I hadn't seen for 20 years, and she knew me as she was. When I knew her, I was Filthy Frank, full blown Filthy Frank, and I only saw her. Barb was her name. I only saw her once during the course of 20 years, and I somehow hooked up with her just before Christmas, and this last year, and I told her what I was doing. I said I wrote a book, blah blah blah, and the Filthy Frank is the author name. That's I'm Filthy Frank is back, and she said yes, good. She said I'm glad that Filthy Frank is back. It's really good. It's a good thing. It's big, she said. So
Well, so let's build on that for a second. You've seen the movie Animal House, right?
yeah,
Okay.
saw it in the theater.
You're showing your age, my friend.
I know. Yeah. Well, you can see some gray hair here and there.
I got you. Okay. So here's my question. The scene when Pinto is with the girl and he's got the angel on one shoulder and he's got the devil on the other shoulder. Here it is. If that was you, is Kevin the angel or the devil? And obviously the same thing for Frank. Who is the angel and who is the devil?
Well, I think that's okay. I would say offhand, without even thinking about it, that Kevin is the devil and Frank is the angel.
You know what? I knew it. I absolutely knew it. As I was thinking about that, question, I was really thinking to myself, I will actually be shocked if the devil is Frank and Kevin is the angel. I really, that would have taken me back if you had phrased it that way.
Yeah. Well, Frank is a guy who's loved by people. He doesn't hurt people. He doesn't upset people. He's just Frank or Filthy Frank or the filth or whatever you want. And a source of entertainment for many, which is what I was. And I was quite happy. I guess maybe I was born an entertainer. I do speeches at funerals and weddings, and I make people laugh like fuck. But really inside, I'm fucking, get me out of here. I'm
Frank
scared.
It seems like Frank has more of a conscience than Kevin does.
Yeah. I think Kevin has a conscience bigger than Frank, but in the wrong direction. Kevin is the guy who is socially engineered and resents the fact that he was socially fucking engineered, whereas Frank isn't socially engineered. He just grew organically and without any hatred, without any love actually either, but just there spewing stuff out that most of it's funny as hell, but some of it's very offensive and
well,
vulgar. And I don't like
folks that are going to read the book, they're going to find out how funny Frank really is.
Yeah, that's right. And then they're going to find out how Kevin Finley has this dark side to him, because you can see the villains are very nasty. Jesse is subject to some very bad things by the villains, and while I wrote that, that was the characters. And as I remember, one of my favorite authors, Stephen King, once said, "I'm just the messenger. I'm just reporting the news. I didn't do this."
I think that's the absolute perfect place for us to stop today. Frank is a very complex character.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin is even more complex.
Yeah, I would say so. And it's easier. It's like a relief being Filthy Frank. And I go see friends now that I haven't seen for a couple of decades. I go visit them now, just to be Filthy Frank, and it's kind of a nice thing. I look forward to it. Once or twice a month, get together. Oh, Filthy Frank's here. Yeah, let's have a couple of drinks or a couple of cups of coffee, and have a laugh. And that's my comedy relief, I guess, for Kevin Finley.
It seems when you truly embraced Frank is when Kevin truly became happy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. And that's very much the truth. Yes.
Perfect place to stop. I want to thank you very much.
Yes, thank you kindly.
And thank you, everybody, for being with us here on the Filthy Frank podcast. He's Kevin. I'm Bruce. We will see you next time.
You bet. Thanks, Bruce.